Hello and welcome again to another episode of On .NET Live, where our mission is to empower you, the .NET community, to achieve more. I'm your host, Cam Soper, and I'm joined by our co-hosts, Maira Wenzel and Frank Boucher. And we have a special guest this week who probably doesn't need much introduction, but we'll introduce him anyway. We've got Scott Hanselman. Scott, how are you doing?
I'm a little tired. It's Monday morning. How are you?
About the same.
Yeah.
We do this every week, Scott.
On Monday. Why did you pick Monday to do this? I think the community stand-up was like Wednesdays. I think we picked like Wednesday after lunch is the time.
So, but I hate to be the one to say this, but I think you were involved in that decision.
Boomerang.
Why would I do that? You know, we can change it. We can change it. It doesn't have to be this way.
So, what do you have for us this week, Scott?
I got a note from the Azure that said that App Service on .NET 6 was going to go out of support in November. So I was like, oh no, like what does that mean? And I have a bunch of sites on it. I've got, Hanselman.com, Hansel Minutes, which is my podcast, the blog, and Azure Friday, as well as some Azure Functions. And I've been putting it off. And I think we all do that kind of stuff, right? Myra has to.
I have been putting off the Azure Functions migration, so it will be a good show for that.
The Azure Functions one is an interesting one. We'll talk about that as well. So I was putting it off, and it's going to sneak up on you, but there's benefits. It's not just benefits around like support, because it'll keep running on .NET 6, but there's certain things that could eventually bit rot after a while. And how long has this been? I mean, it's been 2+ years, almost 3. It just doesn't feel like it. So it was time.
So App Service deprecating .NET 6, that's just like part of the regular life cycle, right? Like 6 is a long-term support release.
Well, let's go put the website up actually, and Myra can walk me through this. So if we go to the .NET website,
let's put you on the screen.
Okay. So if I go to download, we can see that .NET 8 is the current version, right? If I click on all .NET versions, we get this lovely table here that will tell you all the different versions. And it says over here, support phase. So .NET 6 is in maintenance phase. It's part of long-term support. Now, I have a tendency myself to hop between even-numbered .NET versions. So I could have just gone 6, 7, 8, but I kind of bounce like that, and then I will wait for .NET for 10. Now, that's not for all my websites. That's for the ones that are kind of just chilling. If I have a more active website that I want all of the benefits of .NET 9, which are going to be a ton of performance benefits, then I'll just upgrade every year. So there's no particular reason that one needs to go long-term support to long-term support. That's just a bad habit that I have. It's recommended that you update, each version and just kind of follow it, and you'll have less changes. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah.
Seems fair to me.
Okay. So this one here, long-term support lasts 3 years. And again, it says use it if you want to stay supported for longer. And this is just the lazy option, which is fine. I'm just lazy. But it was sneaking up on me. This one came out. When did .NET 6 originally come out?
It was November 2021.
2021? I think it was 2021, yeah, because this is 2024. Yeah, it's been a while. Like I've been sticking around for some time. So all of this is running in my Azure. So if we go over here and look at my app service plan, I've got an app service plan that runs 4 apps. So this is the home page, the blog, the podcast, and then Azure Friday. And then there is this is the app service plan. So that's all running on one app service plan. And this is another good reminder, in my opinion, to folks, is that still these days, people have a tendency to think one app service plan. An app service plan is just a virtual machine. So you can totally put as many as you want in there. And I have to pay for this with my own money. So I shove as much as I possibly can in here. And you'll notice that my CPU percentage is quite low. You know, it's under 20%. But my memory percentage is 80%, because I have shoved that thing maxed out as much as possible. I cache everything. This is an opinion of mine, but on app service, the best thing about it is it's very generous with memory. So if you really want perf, just put as much stuff as you possibly can in memory. So the entire blog is cached in memory. All 20 years is cached in memory. Makes it very fast. Makes it very, very fast.
20 years in
memory. On the
memory.
site, it's very active right now.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, it's just like, so it's interesting. I recently upgraded to this pricing plan, which is a little kind of a secret here. Here's I don't like talking poorly about my coworkers. So don't take this as me talking poorly about my coworkers, but we don't have a tendency at Microsoft to name things very well. And
I hadn't noticed.
It's a little confusing. So for many, many years, I was running on a basic, and then I went to a standard. This here is super interesting to me. So premium, I understand that word, right? Premium is better than not premium. And V3 is better than not V3. But there's this interesting situation here where we've got Premium 1 version 2. Okay, I get that. And then P0 V3.
Mm-hmm.
This has one processor, 4 gigs of RAM instead of 3.5. So P0 V3 is considerably better than P1 V2. This is a better system.
And cheaper.
It is comparable. And look, $41 versus $73. So if you're on a P1 V2 right now, you can probably get over to a P0 V3, newer hardware, and you'll cut your costs almost in half with very comparable perf. And I think the part that is hard is that P0 seems less than, but it is greater than. Regardless of naming being hard, I'm thinking, well, I'm going to upgrade from .NET 6 to .NET 8. I might as well reassert my costs, because this is costing me real money. So I went and excuse me.
Bless you. I might do the same and check what we're using for our site.
So,
I know we changed them a while ago.
How many do we have in the cluster? 4, 5, 8?
Let me see.
Yeah. So it's just this is such a great deal. Thank you, guys. So sorry, it's just allergy season right now. So people will sign up for a SKU and they'll sit there. So I always think, just like at the when the times change, when the hours change from summertime to daylight savings, they tell you to check your fire alarms and your smoke alarms. And I don't know why that's associated. It's like, when you think I'm changing the clocks, change the smoke alarms. When you think it's time to upgrade your .NET, maybe go and think about reasserting all of your app services and stuff like that. So I think that's a good reminder to everybody. So what I'm doing is I'm checking my blood sugar now. So many things going on. Sorry.
It's Monday morning.
Yeah, it is Monday morning, and I'm just making sure I don't die while I'm sitting here. I'm gonna fall apart with low blood sugar, sneezing, and like he's asleep.
Please don't die, Scott.
I won't die. Not till later. None of us are getting out of this alive, Maira. So So I reasserted this and I switched from a P1 V2, and you can do that whenever. Like App Service is great. You just do it. You'll have a little bit of downtime. The price differential is fantastic. Martin in the chat, Martin Costello, is saying that he noticed it also switching from Windows to Linux. So this is a Linux app service, and that's another great reminder that .NET runs everywhere, right? So yeah, we don't need any haters, my friend.
No.
So someone in the chat is saying .NET is messed up. I don't need that, and you're on a .NET live stream, so why are you here, friend?
We'll remove them.
You don't have to remove them; they can be here. But the point is, it's not messed up. It's actually working quite nicely. What I'm trying to share with you is that I cut my bill in half by upgrading to a different app service, and I did it at the same time as moving from 6 to 8. So you know, you're welcome to stay and hang out, but think about the positive stuff rather than being a hater. Nobody needs that. So I had to go and upgrade each one of these, but what I did, the reason I'm pointing this out in the context of an upgrade, is this whole thing is an app service plan. So I got benefits and cut my price in half by upgrading that to a P0 V3. So P0 V3. And I was, for the longest time, not wanting to upgrade because I thought premium meant it was going to cost me a lot. Okay. And I thought premium, now I'm just a hobbyist. I just have this little basic website. So I don't want to pay the money, but it ended up being cheaper in this context than it would have been. And if we go back and look at that in the context of like standard, a standard S1 was $58, but a premium was $41. So don't be afraid of premium. Okay. All right. I'll let Maira clean up the chat. Maybe mute a few folks for me. Let's not block them, but mute them.
I'll put them in timeout.
Time out the haters. Okay. All right. So what I usually do with these things is I start with the basic, which is the Hanselman.com homepage. And one of the things that I'm happy about with this page that I particularly like is something that I did with Damian Edwards' suggestion and help, which is I actually put the version of .NET that I'm running in production at the bottom. Now, some people have feelings about this because by advertising I'm on a certain version, someone could say, oh, you could go and use some security thing and attack me. But this is my personal website. I choose to do that, and it's educational to know what version I'm on. Cam, you have feelings about that?
No, just I get the information leakage standpoint, right? You don't want to broadcast any potential vulnerabilities, but to your point, it's a personal website. Who cares?
Right. Additionally, though, I could very easily put that around a if user is admin, and then only I would see it if I was logged in. Right. So that's what Stack Overflow does. They include performance details and a bunch of stuff. So if you are a Stack Overflow employee, logged in as a Stack Overflow employee, you will see all these kinds of versions. So I'm choosing to keep it public, but you, the audience who might want to go and do that kind of stuff yourself, could do this as well. Micro N is saying that they removed the Kestrel headers because they wanted to do that. That was a very common thing as well during the IIS and .NET 4 and .NET 4.5 days, is not showing it. I'm choosing to do that because I'm an educator, and I think it's kind of cool. And David Pine, I will answer your question about the easy button in a moment. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and we have added the version to the .NET website too, right? And so in that one, we always, like, as part of the monthly release cycle that we have, we also upgrade all the packages as well. So
yeah. And Martin Flug is asking about the roll forward policy. Are you referring to the .NET SDK roll forward policy, which applies to the SDK but not the runtime? Maybe give me a little expansion on what you mean by that, and I'll get you an answer. Now, on the Hansel Minutes website, I go even farther. So I know Cam is going to freak out about this. Not only do I show the version of .NET, I actually show the commit hash and a specific link to the log in Azure DevOps. And I really like that because that allows me to go and look at the website and say, this was released on May 31st, right? Which I think is really cool. That tells me exactly what's going on. Now, both of these, though, are behind authentication. You can scream all you want, Cam. My website's still up.
As a, I think I feel like it's a personal tech blog. So like you're walking the what is it again? Walking the talk.
Yeah.
Like showing stuff, and I think it's kind of
Walking the
it is
walk.
nerd. Yeah,
Sure.
I think it's
So
nerds,
here-
but it's cool. I like that.
This is a private repository, right? So it's a locked repository. So you're not going to click on that and get anything. But I can go and see where I made a change to some CSS back in May. And then I can go over here and I can see in the pipelines the job and see exactly the tests that we're running. So I run all of my stuff in Azure DevOps, and I can see the tests that ran. And it, here we go. 19 tests passed here. So I like that. Again, very easily solved by simply putting an if-is-admin around it.
Mhm.
All right?
And you're running Playwright for your tests, right?
I'm running XUnit, MS Test, and Playwright. So I have multiple levels.
Nice.
So I have my basic unit tests, I have my integration tests, and then I have my Playwright tests, and then they all run in a Docker container. So I can walk through that a little bit as well. I see my friend David Pine is judging me in the comments, offended by my use of pixels. Why do we not like that, David?
I think he would prefer you use EM, whatever we call that. I'm not a CSS guy.
Yeah,
Me neither.
yeah. All I can say is pull requests appreciated.
He can give you access.
Wait, I thought it was a private repository.
He gives
I was
access.
teasing because whenever anyone doesn't like something in open source, you just say pull requests appreciated. Mark Flug is saying, if you don't specify roll forward major, your app will fail when updating to a new runtime version. I don't believe that that's true, but I could be wrong. Why don't we confirm that together? Because I don't think I have that. So I'm at the command line here. Let's go and look at my global. So I don't even have a global JSON for that site.
And Mo is asking
one
the
there.
name of the test again. So you said XUnit?
I'm using XUnit, which is an open source tester. I've recently rediscovered MS Test, which is fantastic. A lot of really cool work has been happening by the MS Test team. And then I use Playwright for the browser testing. So it's kind of multiple layers. So an example would be testing DLLs and assemblies that are small, that are within a unit, true unit testing. Then integration testing, how things work together and interact with each other. And then Playwright fires up a browser, a headless browser, clicks around on the screen and tests the full application running end to end. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm hoping to implement Playwright for the .NET website as well. So once that's done, we can do a show on that as well.
It's lovely. It's lovely. Okay, so Sebastian is saying it will fail. Okay, I thought this was a runtime fail. Yeah, of course. Yeah, okay, so let's be specific. If I were to go to, let's go here, you can notice in my prompt, I've got .NET 8 on this machine right now. So if we go .NET new global JSON, so I've just made a global JSON. Okay. So I'm using Oh My Posh for my prompt. That's why you can see that. And you can see a version of the SDK 80400 here. If I type then .NET info, we can see other versions of .NET, I only have this one SDK on this machine. But if I were to try to pin that to something else, I don't have another SDK, I think, but I can confirm. I think .NET Info would tell me if I had another one, right, friends? I can confirm by going up. I have 2.0. It says I have 2.04. I don't know. I don't. No, I only have the one SDK. So, but what they were going to say was that if I decided to go and open up global JSON, list, okay, I'll do list SDKs. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I don't, because info shows that, I thought.
You should, yeah, I should.
Yeah, just have the one. So, but if I went back over here and then pinned this to something else, that won't work. This will fail. You can see that Oh My Posh picked it up, and they're saying that if I didn't have roll forward, that would fail on the build. Right, exactly. That said, I have been told multiple times by David Fowler and others that switching that using global JSON is almost always a bad idea, and I have recently moved away from doing that. So I avoid doing that at all possible. Thank you, Ryan, for the compliment in the chat there. Appreciate that.
Okay. Oh, really? I didn't know it was a bad idea to use the global.
Yeah, I was told that at the point right now in where .NET is, it's more mature. In the early days of .NET Core 2 and 3, we would use the global JSON to get around stuff. But lately, it's gotten so good that the SDKs targeting different runtimes works very well now. So you don't really need to do that now. Sebastian, I would definitely take his advice. He knows what he's talking about. So he's saying he uses it when it requires a non-LTS SDK. And I think that's a good advice. So yeah, if you're using 9, you could go and pin stuff down. But if you're on, like I am, 6 and 8 and 10,
yeah,
it's very, very reasonable.
Okay, so, yes, I'm using it in the same way then, because I have this 9 SDK, but then when I do apps, I want to do like 8 or something like that, and I use the global to kind of like go down and stay on the LTS.
Right. Now, Eric brings up a very valid point, though. What is the preferred best practice to target an SDK version? I want to parse that apart a little bit. Are you targeting a runtime version or targeting an SDK version? It is correct to edit the global JSON. That's why they exist, to target an SDK version. Why are you targeting an SDK version? So this is where I was pushing, and where I got pushed rather by David Fowler, because I was conflating SDKs and runtimes, and I was trying to. I thought to myself, "Oh, I'll switch into this folder and I'll be .NET 6, and I'll switch into that folder and I'll be .NET 7," and I was moving around, so I would have global JSON sprinkled all over the place. But it's the difference between targeting the top level runtime version versus using the SDK to target that. So my question to Eric is there a thing about the SDK that you prefer that would cause you to pin a folder to a specific SDK? The correct thing to do is not to target that SDK, but to target the actual runtime. So if we open up, for example, my website, and let's go and find the CS Proj. That's the correct way to target a framework at runtime, regardless of SDK version. Yeah. Sebastian makes a great point. What is the minimal build environment you require? Yeah. Interesting. So Mark is putting roll forward major in all of his CS Proj. I would say that that's probably reasonable, but I think you're putting some trust in things. I don't know. That's a great philosophy there, Mark. I feel like roll forward major really comes down to how confident are you in major versions from a compatibility perspective versus how much of a control freak you are. I am happy to let things roll forward minor. I'm not comfortable going all the way to major versions, but this is good. This is why we have these conversations. Martin Costello brings a fantastic point here. there's repeatability, right? There's that repeatability benefit. So the benefit of pinning it, which is why I was doing it for so many years, was you're not going to have any breaks, right? You're not going to break something when an SDK breaks. But Fowler and others are saying, well, it's less and less likely for those things to break going forward because of how things have been architected. Yeah, you're making, and then Mark is pointing out he puts in a lot of trust. So this is a balance. Let's go and wrap this kind of all up into a little bow here. Do I trust the SDK? Do I trust the runtime? What's nice about all of this is you have control. If you do nothing, just keep rolling forward with the SDKs, get the new version of the SDK, do what I do. I have one SDK installed on this machine. I am using that one SDK to target 6, to target 8. I can build on anything and it works just fine. And I have no global JSON. So that's the kind of running, automatic shift vehicle. If you want to drive stick shift, like Martin, like Mark, you can totally do that, and it's fantastic. And you can 100% do that, and you can pin your SDK, you can pin your target framework, or to Mark's point, you can put in roll forward policy. So you get that choice. So I've got some great. I love Sebastian is saying whatever Martin Costello says, we agree with. So I think we can all toast to Martin and agree that Martin has a lot of experience in this space. So we appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think like the SDK, since you will build, like if you're targeting .NET 6 runtime, etc., like it's a good strategy to always have the latest and then just let it run. So you don't have 100%. To have for each version, right? Like the latest will do just fine.
So if you played chess, Maira, do you ever play chess?
No.
So in chess, there's this rule when you're moving your piece, that you put your finger on the piece and it doesn't count as the move until you take your finger off the piece. Okay. So okay. I'll have Fabulous Batman, my Lego person. That's my chess piece. So this is the .NET equivalent of moving the piece and then just kind of like looking around the board, but I haven't taken my finger off the piece yet. So I'm like, I don't really know yet. So if I rolled forward, I would be doing it automatically while I slept. If I didn't pin stuff, it's like, do I want .NET to just be okay with that chess piece moving? I'm a paranoid. I always put my finger on the chess piece and I kind of wait and I move around and I think about it. Other people don't. And then that's what's great. Martin points out that he did a previous episode on the stream where he did this to have the GitHub Actions update the patches every month. So that's a really interesting one. Oh, this is going to be a very random stream. I hope people are okay with this. Pedro has a fantastic question. He's calling something really, really interesting out. He's calling me out publicly. Why on God's green earth would you use that? The God's green earth part was implied in parentheses. You can't see it there. Pedro is saying, why would you use IIS URL rewrite? All right, this is great. So if you followed me for a very long time, you know that the blog is, 22 years old. And back in 2019, I was moving this blog off of bare metal. It was running on a physical piece of hardware, not in a virtual machine. It was actually running on a computer under someone's desk in Canada. And I did a series called Real World Cloud Migrations, where I moved all of these sites physically off of the metal and onto Azure. Because this was running on a real machine, Pedro, I have a post about everything. This was running on a physical machine on Windows Server 2003, 2000 and something old, and IIS. So I was running on IIS. One of the great things about IIS, and you can say that there aren't any things that are good about IIS, but it worked very, very well for 20 years, was IIS Rewrite, which was an HTTP module. And that module has an XML format that allows you to very crisply and cleanly do redirects. So for example, people like to go to hanselman.com/tools, and they use that as a high-level redirect, like a bit.ly, to get to my latest tools list. So I can put in redirects to say, go to /tools, or if you are hot linking, if you're stealing graphics from my blog, then I will not give you the graphic. I will give you a mean you shouldn't steal from me graphic. People were stealing from me, and this is what I do. So if you see, I don't like that. Did you ever see that, Maira?
No.
Yeah,
I never stole any images from you.
Yeah, you're better saying that. No, I never saw that.
Isn't that great?
It's awesome. I didn't even think about doing something like that. It's awesome.
StreamYard's over here. Okay, so the deal is, if you go asking for a graphic and your HTTP referrer is one of a list of referrers that I have, and I have a bunch of bad guys that are people who steal my blog content, they all get the wrong image, and I make them, yeah.
Very bad guys, super bad
Now,
guys.
so here's my question here's my answer for Pedro. So this is IIS specific. Okay. Now, this used to be called HT access on Apache. This is a very common concept. It's an idea of a declarative text file that describes how to change your URLs, right? It's a redirector, but this is not code. This is just it just happens to be XML. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is, right? It would be called HT access if it was on Apache. But then I moved to Kestrel. IIS is not a thing for me because I'm on Linux now. So why would I need this? Well, let's go back in here. If you go to Startup, which is your IIS startup, IIS doesn't exist, but your startup.cs, which fires up inside of ASP.NET, has an extension called add IIS URL rewrite middleware. And to Sebastian's point, the URL rewrite middleware on .NET supports both IIS format and HT access, which means if you're an Apache user or an IIS user, and I haven't been on this, I haven't been on IIS in 10 years, but that XML file works. It's a great file. It's done. It's finished. Why would I go and try to convert that? I don't need to. If I have a great, perfectly tuned HT access file, I'm going to use it. So I just think it is fantastic that in the moving of my 20-year-old blog to the cloud, I got to bring this file along with me. It's just such a wonderful thing. We don't get the credit, Microsoft doesn't, for backwards compat. I just think it's so cool that I wrote that file in 2003, and I've been carrying it around with me for all this time, and it works just fine. So that is the answer to your question, Pedro, and it's a great question, in fact, and I appreciate that. Okay. All right. Okay. So I've got all these different websites. The first thing I usually do is I run .NET outdated, which is just a wonderful tool. Let's see if I can find something outdated. Most of my projects are pretty up to date. .NET outdated. I've just been singing the praises of this thing forever. Here we go. Look at this. So good. This is a global tool. .NET outdated. Let me see if I wrote a blog post about that.
You should have one for each, right?
There we go. I wrote one in back in 2020. So .NET tool, .NET outdated -tool. Okay. Oh, Sebastian says there's a new one in .NET 9. Let's see .NET 4. Let's see .NET Y. .NET Y? Is .NET Y a thing? I don't think I have .NET Y on this version.
Yeah, you don't have the .NET 9 install.
So maybe.
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you, Frank. Say that again.
Sorry, I'm on my wrong mic this morning. I was saying you don't have .NET 9 install, right? You said you have.
No, but I do have .NET 8. 8. Remember if we go to .NET info, I've got 804. So in 804, I do have .NET NuGet Y. Thank you, friends. Okay, shows the dependency graph for a particular package. So let's look at our dependency graph. So I'm going to go and I'm using bat, which is my command line. It's a better cat, because cat is how you do like a text, right? So if I have like cat, right, but I can say bat, and I'll get it in color with like links. So it's kind of cool. I like the command line. I like to drive stick shift. So let's go over here, and then we'll say csproj. So here's a csproj. So if I wanted to say something about this guy here, I could say .NET NuGet Y. Is that correct? Solution and then package. Okay. There you go. Let me just try to find another one with a little bit more interest. Maybe Poly.
So we can't do the whole.
I'm not having any. None of these have any complicated. They don't have any complicated dependencies that are going to try. I need a transitive dependency, not a.
Oh
yes,
yeah.
Sebastian beat me to it. Let's go back up. I don't think I have anything that complicated in this particular site. Try Playwright. Maybe NuGet analyzers. Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, they all seem straight.
They're all direct. I need one underneath them. I need one underneath them.
Yeah, I don't see any like in some projects that I have.
Polycore. There you go. Let's do Polycore, because Polycore would have come in because of Poly, and we won't be able to see it. We need one that's brought in. So what you're doing is you're asking, why did this get brought in by this? And it'll tell you which one brought it in.
Yeah, like in some projects I have like system drawings, some other things that I have to do.
Because you're asking yourself, hang on a second, how did this get in there? Oh, the testing one. Sorry. Everyone's in the chat screaming at me right now because I'm an idiot.
You're so good at keeping up with the chat. Usually we try not to have our guests go there.
You ignore the chat?
No, we bring you and we bring to the guests so that they don't have to worry about it. But you're good at multitasking, like that.
Where did we lose Poly? I'm running around too fast, and I can't remember where I brought Poly in. Which one had Poly? Normal Poly.
I don't remember.
I was looking up bat on GitHub.
There we go. Yay!
Oh, finally.
It took too long. Sorry, everybody. Okay, cool. So what they wanted me to show was .NET NuGet Y is, thank you, Sebastian. Why do I have this? Well, it came in because of this, came in because of that, right? So like, how did you get there? So that's a real benefit, and that's built in now. So that's great. Thanks, friends. Sorry for the back and forth there. So then, where are we? Let's go back up one. We'll do .NET Outdated. And .NET Outdated is a tool that's separate, which is kind of a supercharged. It's going through the entire graph and looking at NuGet and saying, okay, look. Almost
so
like
it's a CLI version of the managed NuGet packages and VS.
But it does so much more though, because it's going through the entire graph, going into NuGet. .NET NuGet Y tells you why this thing was in the transitive dependency graph. .NET Outdated looks up, says, well, this is a minor version. This is a slightly less minor version, right? Like this is probably safe because down here it's a patch version. These are minors, and then red would be a major. right?
Yeah.
Sebastian says, why do you need Y? It's when you have a vulnerable dependency and you didn't even know you were using it, which is a great point, because if I go over here and look at, this is my podcast in Visual Studio Senior. Where did my issues error list go? See, system.text.json has a known vulnerability, right? So here I'm getting from Visual Studio that vulnerability thing. And then to Sebastian's point, .NET 9 brings those vulnerability checks by default. So if I'm like, wait a second, I didn't even know if I had that. How did I get that? Then I can go and figure that out. And then .NET Outdated, to Martin's point, I'm in my top level folder, and there are 4 projects in here. .NET Outdated is running on all of them, across all of them, and it's telling me this project has these updates, this project has those updates. So if I wanted to go and be kind of wacky here, I could go and say -u, and look, it's actually going to go and upgrade each of these. Now this is YOLO, right? You only live once. I would probably not do that, but it's going to go and upgrade my entire application to the latest. Now, I would only do that if I had really great code coverage, and I was deeply confident in all of that stuff. Now, fortunately, I do have good code coverage, and I do have some confidence in this particular project. So I don't feel super bad about this. Plus, it was all patches and minors. Okay, so now we run .NET Outdated, and it's clean.
Awesome.
Okay. So then we can go and see that it's modified these CS projects for me. And then I could go and run them all.
Was it what David Pines was asking before, like the click button to upgrade everything? What you just did with Outdated?
So this is one way to do it. Yeah, there's also, I believe, a way in Visual Studio with a plugin.
Okay,
but that was the go and upgrade all of your packages. Now, that didn't upgrade .NET from 6 to 8. That just updated my packages. To update .NET from 6 to 8, I would go over here and I would say, where's the upgrade thing?
Upgrade. It's in the first section.
Oops, not publish. Upgrade. So I would go and use the upgrade assistant. So there's a bunch of strategies on how to do this. So the right way to do it would be to make a branch, and then over in that branch, switch it to a major version or run this upgrade, and then slowly work your way. Usually you have to decide if you're going to go from leaf nodes up or how you want to do that. And then at this point, I've also got my tests. Now I've got a bunch of PowerShell scripts here. Now, these PowerShell scripts are very small. They're really quite stupid. These are interesting, though. I think these are interesting because I want to make sure that I'm testing my applications on Windows and on Linux. So you'll notice that they are .ps1 files, which gives me Windows. And then it has what's called a hashbang or a shebang in the first line, which means it'll run on Linux as well. Now, I don't use PowerShell as my shell on Linux, but I use it as a script runner. So this allows me to go and run these things on Linux and know that those PS1 files will work anywhere. So for example, if we have Docker test, Docker test, actually I just ran it. I'll stop that. This one is a little bit tricky because it has a slightly different, it actually has a, if I'm on Windows, do something differently than if I'm not on Windows, because I'm actually changing the paths. And I can see here that this path is wrong. I'm actually not on the C drive. I'm on the D drive. My D drive is actually a dev drive. Are you all familiar with dev drives? Anyone here using a dev drive? Frank, you got one? Maira? Oh, great. This is good. We get to teach about a dev drive. Dev drives are great. Okay. So in Windows, if you go into settings and you go to the developers section for developers, go all the way down to the bottom, you can create a drive on your Windows machine that is just for developing. It's a source code drive. A dev drive is a source code drive. And instead of being NTFS, which is the older new technology system from Windows NT, it will be a REFS, which is a reliable file system, which came from Windows Server. And that allows you to get anywhere from 15 to 30% more perf. And you can change the antivirus behavior on the dev drive so it won't scan the code that you literally just compiled until later. So it asynchronously scans that code. So if you run a build that generates a whole crap ton of code, it's getting antivirus scanned. This will be trusted and scanned later, so your perf can be really extraordinary. So if you create a dev drive, like here on my Samsung, you can do it 2 different ways. But I made a 50 gig dev drive or a 100 gig dev drive, and it automatically partitions your stuff. So it's a totally different file system. It's a very fast file system. And then I changed my prompt here, my oh my posh, to put an icon there when I'm on a dev drive. So I know I'm on a dev drive when I go there. So C versus D, that's my reminder that I'm on that dev drive. So that's a faster drive. But you can see here in my Docker test, that's actually incorrect. So I'm going to fix that. And I'm going to change it to D. And that is a volume map to make sure that the results of my Docker test volume map to the right folder. Okay, so now we'll run Docker test on this machine. See if this works. Now you can see here when I did my upgrade from 6 to 8, I also needed to go and update my Docker to make sure that my Docker file is pulling from .NET 8 and using the .NET SDK. And then I also need to make sure that my GitHub pipeline or my Azure DevOps pipeline is using the right SDK as well. So those are little things that people tend to miss. Now, I am using Playwright for my browser tests. And this is a step that I need to make better. This is actually installing Playwright in Docker. And this is a challenge because Playwright has a Docker base image, but it doesn't have, so it has Playwright pre-installed, but it doesn't have the latest version of .NET. So do I use the Playwright image and then update .NET, or do I use the .NET image and then update Playwright? What I should do is a tip from Rich Lander, which is do a cross-image copy, which is an advanced Docker technique where I would say, using this image, pull from this folder in that image. So I would use the base image for .NET and then copy Playwright over in an image-to-image copy. But I actually
it just copies that one layer out of the...
And it copies just that one. No, it copies the files. It basically mounts the image, copies it over. So right now I'm paying like a 50-second tax that's done now, but it was still a tax. It's annoying. And then Playwright knows it's running in a Docker container. So it's going to go and build. And now it's going to run that test. And here's a test just failed. See? So 18 of my tests succeeded and 1 failed inside of show database tests. So this is an XUnit test, not a Playwright test. The Playwright tests are running now. We'll see if they actually work. Okay. David Pine, how do I know? So you can make a dev drive on a VHD if you are afraid or concerned that you don't want to resize your partitions. If you're not comfortable with the idea, David, of partitioning your drive, or you think you're going to mess it up, then you would just make a VHD. It's harmless, it's safe, but you're going to be layering file systems. You're going to have a VHD of one file system on top of another file system. Okay. If you say create a dev drive, you have this choice to resize an existing volume. So if you click resize an existing volume, it's going to go and look at all of your volumes. And it's a little confusing. You want to read this extra careful. It's not asking you what the size should be of the dev drive. It's asking you what the resulting size of your main drive should ultimately be. So if I were going to go and pick something like this, that right there is not the size of the dev drive. That's the size that you want of the hosted drive. So this would squish it. Don't pick that number. Basically, take your drive number minus the dev drive. So I would say, 2.6 terabytes. That would give me a 200 gig dev drive.
Yeah.
You won't hurt yourself, but you basically have to turn around and fix it again. Another way to look at it would be to go and look at disk management in the old styles. We go back over here, you can see that's my C drive. There's this one, and then there's the 50 gig REFS drive. Another way to look at this is with dev home, which makes it a little easier. So if I bring up dev home, which is coming up on another monitor, and then I'll drag it over here. I believe it is, yeah, dev drive. They got dev drive insights. And this is actually cool too. I bet you, Cam and Frank, do you know about this? It has built into dev home the detection of the different caches on your system and will move them automatically to the dev drive. So it's moved all my NuGet packages and the NuGet environment variable over to the dev drive. So I'm going to get that benefit as well. If I simply move the source code, Maira, but I didn't move NuGet, then I'm doing cross-drive stuff.
So where cool. Do you see that in?
Go into dev home and click Windows customization.
Okay, I will have a look.
And then
always do the same thing in dev home. So that's cool. I'll have a look.
Isn't that great? Now notice that node does not appear there because I don't have node installed in this machine. So it will only bring up caches for things that you've actually used. So I've used Python on this machine. I've used NuGet on this machine. So now if we go and look at my D drive, there's a packages folder, and here's NuGet. So the NuGet cache is on the dev drive. So that right now is in dev home, but I understand that there's some talk about making Visual Studio know more about this stuff. So Visual Studio should do that. There you go. Now, Cam, when you click do it, if you have a big NuGet cache, it might take 15 minutes. So there's going to be a long pause. So don't freak out that it's chewing.
Yeah, I've got the spinning donut of death right now.
Okay, so you're going to be there for a while. So buckle up and just watch Taskman. And when it's done, it's done. And when it's done, it'll eventually say optimized. And what you'll end up with, if we go back over here, and we'll go and we'll look at this, you'll end up with a environment variable as well. That's going to tell everyone where your NuGet cache has been moved to. Isn't that cool? Yeah. And then Stuart Lang in the chat points out something really, really important, which is the perf benefits of copy on write for REFS with dev drives is really significant. And by significant, I mean orders of magnitude. If you go and look at the dev drive blog, dev drive for performance, Grace Taylor, good friend, points out that copy on write block cloning can make copying gigabytes in milliseconds. Absolutely fast. It saves disk space for sparse data, and you can use it using the copy on write extension for MS Build. So if you have a MS Build file that's really, really complicated, and you are copying an artifact at the end of something, you can go and get the copy on write for .NET NuGet package. It's literally called copy on write. Okay. And it's a .NET layer on top of some Windows operating system specific writing. And what's cool about it is it will automatically, so it's for Windows functionality, but then if you use file.copy on Mac, you'll get stuff for what's called ButterFS. ButterFS is like REFS is to NTFS as ButterFS is to ext4, right? So it's a faster copy on write compatible operating system. And then copy on write uses links instead of file copies. So if you have any big builds or you're using any of the build accelerators, you'll get some crazy perf. And I thought there was these are all, and by the way, this is all of like the where to put all your packages for Rust and Yarn for dev drives. I'm trying to find there was a chart that was showing how much faster it was. The performance is bananas. There it is. Build time reduction for large C#, 40% faster for a large C# application. And then they explain why and how it works. And then they also explain whether or not a file is a copy on write link and how to make it faster. So pretty cool stuff. I know that that's a whole other talk, but I wanted to show you that.
And the hour flew by for me.
I didn't even realize that we're still at an hour here. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, it was awesome.
I got to go figure out why my test is not working right now, and I got to update my Playwright.
Yeah.
Stuart says it's now baked into .NET. Okay, so Stuart, are you saying that we do not have to use copy on write anymore? Let's see what Stuart says while I fix this test. Okay, 922. Fix that test. Interesting. David Pine says he calls it BetterFS. Yeah, but I'm ice skating uphill, David. I'm going to call it butter. Okay.
All right.
All right. Well, that's fun.
Cam, are you wrapping up for us?
Yeah, I can wrap up. I was just waiting to see when Scott was done.
Yeah, no.
Oh, I just want to make, I'm not going to be able to sleep until this test passes.
Yeah, you want the test to work.
We have plenty of time since it's the morning for you.
Why is it not working here? Oh, okay. Playwright is a little goofy in this installing browsers. Playwright runs, this needs to be .NET 8. Playwright installs its browsers in a private cache. So basically it's not using your browser to test. It's downloading Firefox and Chromium into private folders, and it's putting them into app data local. So I wanted to make sure that those are updated, and that allows it to be theoretically more reliable and more repeatable. So it's using those private browser builds locally. That's my this is end cover right here. So this is my code coverage for the podcast. This is using a really great open source tool called end cover. Now, right now it's firing up the browsers, but you can't see them because they're headless. So it's running the browsers, it's running Chromium, it's running Firefox, and they're invisible, which is kind of sucks, but it's good if you're running it in GitHub Actions or you're running it in Azure DevOps. But I'm going to open up another folder while that's running. It's running in the background. And I'll show you, I have headed tests and headless tests. So if I go to headed tests versus headless tests, it literally just sets an environment variable called headed. And headless means don't show it on the monitor. It has no head. It has no monitor. So the opposite of headless is headed. This is kind of a joke, but it's their joke, not mine.
So that will help you to understand why the test is failing?
So in this case here, I'm getting an interesting timeout test. So something is not loading, and I can't see it, right? So that's a challenge. So I need to run a headed test. So then that now is going to fire up browsers that I can see. Yeah. Maybe it's the wrong port. Maybe it's something's going on I'm not going to be able to see because I want to make sure. Here we go. So now here the browser just popped up. Right. So there's my podcast and it's clicking. Here we go. So here, something typed in the word category there in searching for something. And now it is timing out looking for something. So it's going to sit there for 30 seconds and then fail. There's the fail. Okay. So now it's firing up another browser. It typed the word episode. So these tests are JavaScript tests that are local. So somewhere in here, I've changed the behavior, or the behavior of one of my tests has changed. And that's failing. So now that I can see that it's typing that, it says, well, I'm looking for episode 1, and does episode exist is the task.
The test.
So here it says, go to that URL, click on this folder, type in the word episode, and you should find that episode. It's not finding it though. So then I need to go and figure out why it's failing at that point now that I can see it typing. Yeah, Eric is pointing out in the chat that doesn't the error stack give you the clue? Yeah, it does. It's giving me the clue right there, but it's telling me where it failed in the stack, but it failed because of something it typed 3 lines ago. So I wanted to see it. And DF Maira, am I using Playwright with C# or JavaScript? I'm using it with C#. So in this case here, in the context of an XUnit test, this is an XUnit test, and I'm using Playwright and their .NET SDK to go and do that work. Yeah, line 129. Yeah, I'm aware that is the stack, but it failed because of that. So now I need to go and run it and find out why. So I've changed something, and that'll be a couple 10 minutes and I'll fix it. But I think I'm late for my next meeting.
So we can wrap up.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So
No,
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us, Scott. And
it was kind of frenetic. I apologize. It was not nearly as organized as I thought it was.
I don't think anybody's complaining. There was a lot of information dumping that I think a lot of people are going to find useful.
It was a problem.
So anyway, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Scott, and thank you, everybody, for tuning into on .NET Live. This is a reminder to check out other .NET live streams and videos at .NET Whack Live, and to please join us next Monday when we'll be joined by our friend Chase Oakwine, who's going to be talking about some magic that he's doing with iasync enumerable. It should be pretty interesting. See you then.